L. Frank Baum had been struggling, and his fans were still clamoring for more sequels to The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. But would he write them? And would he find success again? Hello, I'm Cody Goggin, and welcome to the Royal Historian of Oz. After the tremendous success of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and the varying success and failure of his follow-up projects, L. Frank Baum developed a plan to begin writing for older audiences. He had for some time been hoping to break out of Oz and to tell new stories set in new lands. But his audience demanded more Oz. This led Frank to begin writing under a pseudonym and eventually several different false names. These books include Sam Steele's Adventures on Land and Sea, which Baum wrote as Captain Hugh Fitzgerald. The book was released in 1906 and was directed toward a male teenage audience. It borrowed influences from Treasure Island and features many ship-based adventures. The Last Egyptian was aimed at an adult audience and published with no author credited at all. And The Flying Girl was aimed at young women and featured Baum sympathizing with the feminist movement that his wife's mother had been such a large part of. Frank wrote this under the name Edith Van Dyne, and he would use this name again. Under Edith Van Dyne, Baum wrote Aunt Jane's Nieces, a story similar to Little Men and Little Women. The book became a hit with young girls. So much so that from 1906 to 1915, Frank Baum wrote 10 books in the Aunt Jane's Nieces series, all attributed to Edith Van Dyne. But having ended Ozma of Oz with things set up for a fourth Oz book, and with fans ever eager, Baum began working on another journey to Oz. Written around the time of an earthquake in San Francisco, the book would borrow elements from this real-life event, and was released on June 18, 1908. It would be called Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz. It would be one of only 2 Oz books to feature watercolor artwork, again provided by John R. Neal. Dorothy Gale is traveling with her Uncle Henry to visit relatives in California. She is joined by her cat Eureka and soon meets her second cousin, Zeb. Dorothy, Eureka, and Zeb are riding behind a horse named Jim when suddenly the earth begins to shake and they are sucked into a large opening in the ground. Together, they land in a place called the Land of the Mangaboos, who are a vegetable people that grow on vines. The Mangaboos suspect Dorothy and her friends to have caused the earthquake and sentence them to death for the destruction of the Mangaboos' glass buildings. But just then, a hot air balloon descends into the land, and within it is the wizard who Dorothy last seen at the end of the first Oz book. The wizard uses his magic to light a fire, which the Mangaboo people have never seen before. They postpone the death sentence and make the humbug wizard their royal court wizard. But soon, Dorothy and her friends are driven out of the Mangaboo land through a dark tunnel. And from the tunnel, they emerge into a valley where the people eat strange fruit to stay invisible, so as to avoid bear attacks. Not wanting to be attacked by bears themselves, Dorothy, Eureka, the wizard, Zeb, and Jim all leave this land and climb Pyramid Mountain, where they meet the Braided Man and exchange gifts. Then, the travelers pass through the land of gargoyles and narrowly escape these silent wooden creatures. After another brief episode encountering baby dragons, they all arrive within a cave that has no way out. But luckily, every day at 4 p.m., Ozma uses her magic to check on Dorothy from afar, and through this, she uses the magic belt to summon all the travelers away from danger and back to the Emerald City. The wizard then meets Ozma and elects to remain in the Emerald City for good. He uses a sleight of hand magic trick to pull a piglet from a hat, and he gives it to Ozma as a gift. But soon, Dorothy's cat Eureka is accused of eating it. After a brief trial, the piglet is restored safely to Ozma, and she uses her magic to send Dorothy, Eureka the cat, Zeb, and Jim all back home safe. Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz was released about a year after its predecessor, and it's been noted that it's darker in tone than the other Oz books. Nevertheless, it was rather successful, and around this time, Baum remarked on his happiness in a letter written for his silver anniversary with Maud. It read, "Husband swore 1,187 times. At wife, 0. Causes of jealousy, 0. Broke occasionally, bent often, unhappy, 0. One thing Frank may have been discouraged in, however, were the sales of his non-Oz related books. He had expressed a certain disgruntlement in the foreword of the fourth Oz book, saying that he knew many tales of many lands, and that he hoped readers would permit that he told them. But with the lagging sales of books like Queen Zixi of Ix, Baum devised a plan for the fifth Oz book to introduce Oz readers to the characters from his other worlds. That book would become The Road to Oz. The Road to Oz begins with Dorothy in Kansas and her dog Toto, where she meets the Shaggy Man. The Shaggy Man is an optimistic hobo, and he asks Dorothy for directions to the nearest town on the prairie. Her and Toto agree to show him the way. But after coming to a fork in the road and choosing the seventh path, the three of them seem to enter another dimension. They meet Button-Bright, a wealthy young boy who is also lost, and Polychrome, who is the daughter of a rainbow who has fallen from the sky and is now stranded on Earth. The entire group comes upon Foxville, where talking foxes reveal to Dorothy that she is on another adventure to the land of Oz, just in time for Ozma's royal birthday party. But the foxes turn Button-Bright and Shaggy Man into foxheads. From there, the travelers leave and meet the musicker, whose mystic breath creates music in the air. And they come to the edge of the deadly desert. And because the desert will turn travelers to sand should they touch it, they continue on a sand boat and cross over into Oz. There they meet up with Billina the chicken and Tick-Tock, who lead the travelers to the Truth Pond. Shaggy Man and Button-Bright use the water of the pond to return their heads to normal. They then are reconnected with the Tin Woodman, the Scarecrow, and Jack Pumpkinhead, and together they all make way for the Emerald City. Within the city, they meet Ozma, who arrives in a chariot pulled by the Cowardly Lion. Other guests of the party include the Wizard, the Sawhorse, the Wogglebug, the Good Witch of the North, Santa Claus, Queen Zixi of Ix, the Queen of Merryland, and the royal family of Ev. After the party, the wizard reveals a method of using bubbles to transport everyone home. Polychrome is reunited with the rainbow in the sky because of this system. Button-Bright goes home with Santa Claus, and the Shaggy Man stays in Oz. Finally, Dorothy and Toto are sent home by Ozma by way of the magic belt. The Road to Oz was released on July 10th, 1909, and was unusually printed on color paper, with the paper color-coded according to whichever land Dorothy and her friends was visiting within Oz. It featured artwork again by John R. Neal, and was dedicated to L. Frank Baum's first grandson, Jocelyn. But the inclusion of other characters didn't do much to sway his fans from demanding more Oz stories. Perhaps out of frustration or simply fatigue, Baum decided that for the next Oz book, he would write it with the intention of it being the last. He would then close the book on Oz for good. He would call this intended finale, The Emerald City of Oz. Dorothy Gale has been telling her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry all about her adventures in Oz, but neither of them believe her. They say she is a dreamer, as her deceased mother had been. It is then revealed that the tornado from the first Oz book has rendered Uncle Henry in terrible debt and about to lose the farm. After learning of her uncle's struggles, Dorothy has Ozma bring her aunt and uncle into Oz, where they can remain living happy and safe. Dorothy introduces Aunt Em and Uncle Henry to all her friends, such as the Cowardly Lion and Billina the Chicken. Meanwhile, away in the Gnome Kingdom, the Gnome King concocts a plan to overtake Oz and reclaim his magic belt from Ozma. He expels his general and orders the death of his colonel after they refuse his plans, but a veteran soldier named Guff convinces the Gnome King that against the magicians of Oz, they would surely lose. So the king sets out looking for allies. Dorothy, meanwhile, is accompanied by the wizard as she takes Aunt Em and Uncle Henry out of the Emerald City to give them a tour of Oz. Along their travels, they meet living, breathing jigsaw puzzles, talking kitchen utensils, and then old friends such as the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman. The Gnome King sends Guff to recruit the Whimsies. The Whimsies are a large group of beings with heads the size of a doorknob. They wear large masks to hide their small heads and agree to help, hoping that the magic belt will grow their heads. Then Guff recruits the Growlywogs, great muscle-bound beings who agree but secretly plan to turn all of Oz and the gnomes into slaves. Finally, he recruits the Phanphasms of Fantastico, who are very mysterious and resemble men with various animal heads. They too agree, but secretly plan to turn traitor on the Gnome King after Oz is defeated. Ozma and the people of Oz learned this through the use of a magic picture, and as the evil armies tunnel under the deadly desert, Ozma uses the magic belt to send a wave of dust through the tunnel, which makes the evil armies very thirsty. As they burst into Oz, they immediately drink from the Fountain of Oblivion, which makes them forget their evil plans. The Gnome King at first does not drink, but he is thrown into the fountain by the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman. Ozma then uses the belt to send the Gnome King and his armies home, and to prevent a future attack, Glinda the Good Witch seals Oz away from the outside worlds. Dorothy and her family would continue living there. The book was published on July 20th, 1910, 1 year after its predecessor. With this, Baum felt he had concluded the Oz tale and sealed it with a bow. He would focus his sights on beginning a new series of adventures and putting Oz behind him. The first book he would write for this new series would be an underwater fairy tale that was only able to garner about half of the sales that the previous Oz book had garnered. This was called The Sea Fairies. And it was followed by a sequel called Sky Island, which even included Polychrome and Button Bright from the Oz series. Though this book was critically well regarded and Baum considered it one of his best works, Sky Island sold even fewer copies than its predecessor, The Sea Fairies. Again, L. Frank Baum found himself at something of an impasse. Though he had never intended on going back to Oz again, the pressure was growing heavier than ever. Where will his imagination take him next? Find out next time on The Royal Historian of Oz. I'm your host, Cody Goggin, and farewell.